Hello, and welcome to Team Leadership. This module is called Building Effective Work Teams. This module has 4 sections. First, we'll talk about phases of building a team, then signs of discontent. We'll follow up with team interventions on how you can improve the situation, and thoroughly discuss team effectiveness factors so you can focus on ways to improve your team's productivity, commitment, profitability, and general motivation. First, phases of building a team. These are the common phases that teams go through as they become acquainted with each other and work together towards achieving common goals. When a team is first established, you're in the beginning phase, where there's a lot of excitement, anticipation, and optimism. However, there's also fear of the unknown. What are the objectives? What are the goals? How much time is it going to take? How overwhelmed am I going to feel? These are the common questions that team members would ask themselves. Once the team members begin working together, you'll notice certain fluctuations in attitude about the team. Unless steps are taken to clarify roles, goals, and responsibilities, some of this conflict is inevitable. Team members might become defensive, and there might be an increased competition where people choose sides. There may be a period of disunity and increased tension and conflict. Hopefully, you can work through that conflict, and then team members can perform at a high level. But it takes a team intervention strategy to ensure that everyone is on the same page. In the third and final phase, team members have a good stride in terms of productivity and motivation. They can see the end goal, and they are motivated to achieve that goal. There's a sense of satisfaction with the team's progress, and team members have the ability to prevent issues or work through group problems. There's constructive self-change, and finally, accomplishment of the overall goal. There's a certain amount of conflict that should be expected. However, if you notice these signs of conflict and discontent, you'll want to take steps to alleviate the issues. Here are some signs: decreased productivity, conflicts or hostility among team members, confusion about assignments, missed signals, and unclear relationships. Decisions are misunderstood or not carried through properly. There's apathy and lack of involvement. People seem unmotivated. There's a lack of initiation, imagination, and innovation, and routine tasks seem to be put off until later, but never get done. Employees tend to complain about discrimination or favoritism, and staff meetings become ineffective. There's low participation and minimally effective decisions. Sometimes the manager or the supervisor is the target of a complaint, so the manager gets blamed for everything. And sometimes there are complaints about the quality of service that team members are offering to each other or to their outside customers. What can you do if that's the case? Here are some examples of team interventions you might want to try to get people back on task. Conduct a pep rally meeting and re-energize the team members. Talk about the obstacles that you have encountered, but reaffirm your commitment to achieving goals. Use your motivational powers to renew commitment. Or offer incentives or other motivation to increase productivity. If a pep rally won't work, perhaps team members need some additional incentive. Usually it does not need to be expensive. It could just be a lunch with the president, a half day off, a celebratory party, or other appropriate incentive. You could demand compliance and threaten employees. This is not usually a good way to deal with employees all the time, but sometimes for short-term deadlines, this is effective. You could deploy more resources, refocus the team on the tasks that they are skilled in and enjoy doing, and get someone else to take on some of their tasks. The person could have committed to more than they can handle and needs to be relieved of certain responsibilities. More resources in terms of time, people, or money is usually an effective way to get people back on track. You could try delegating more effectively. The problem could be in the way you delegated responsibility or authority. Review the rules for delegation that we talked about previously and have face-to-face meetings with your staff to explain your expectations more effectively. Sometimes you don't have the right mix of skills on the team, and sometimes you need to replace team members. While you don't want to waste time onboarding another team member, sometimes there is no alternative. Take steps to oversee the knowledge transfer and spend some time welcoming and affirming your expectations with the new team. Sometimes an influx of new ideas and new energy is just what the team needs to get them back on track. Psychologists have spent a lot of time researching what makes a team effective. We're going to be talking about the factors that make a team effective and how you can utilize some of these ideas to improve your team's performance. There are many factors that make a team effective. According to Michael Jordan, talent wins games, but teamwork and intelligence wins championships. Here's a model that talks about all the many factors that make a team effective. We have feedback, accepted assignments, consensus, trust, opinions, respect, and shared leadership. F is for feedback, and we've talked quite a bit about giving feedback and why it's so important. We want to make sure that feedback is constructive, not destructive. You want continual feedback on an informal basis, and give your candid feedback with sincerity. Make sure that your feedback is given frequently and it's focused on 1 or 2 items max at each time. Don't overload the person with 3, 4, or 5 issues to fix. Feedback helps identify blind spots. People might not have been aware of some of the issues, but the whole process itself builds trust and credibility. It's also a process that builds skills because you're transferring your knowledge to the other person through effective feedback. A is for accepted assignments. You have clear accepted goals. You delegate specific accepted task assignments as we discussed in the delegating a task or assignment section. You create an action plan with people's names and the due date. You don't just say, hey, you got this, right? But you ask for commitment and ensure that you've answered any questions that they might have regarding the assignment. C is for consensus. Consensus means that you're collaborating with your staff members, exploring alternatives, soliciting their input, and addressing any issues or concerns that they have. Make sure that you validate the good ideas they come up with. Say something like, that's a good idea, however, we might not be able to do that. Or I think you have a lot of valid points, however, we don't have the budget for that. Throughout this process, you're finding common ground. We do all want the same thing. We want to work together in a mutually beneficial environment. So try to build consensus as frequently as possible. Not that you can always take people's point of view into consideration, but you're engaging them in the conversation and asking for their input goes a long way to building your relationship with team members. And if you can't do what they suggest, tell them why. T is for trust. And trust is one of the most important aspects of being a supervisor or manager. Your staff needs to trust you. This requires you to be consistent and dependable. The minute you're inconsistent or not dependable, that is going to hurt your reputation and your relationship with your staff. But you can develop trust by showing concern, being consistent and dependable, being a good role model. And if you make a mistake, admit you made a mistake. Oh, opinions. Opinions are important. Your staff members are the ones that are actually doing the work on the line or with customers. And so they'll have some definite opinions about your decisions. So ask for an opinion before you make decisions. You could do this through surveys or your general one-on-one feedback sessions. But basically you want to listen and consider their viewpoints. You may want to invite your manager or a senior executive in to talk to employees about their opinions. And certainly, if you can't take action on their suggestion, tell them why you can't. And R stands for respect. Respect we have talked about in other acronyms because it's an important aspect of being an effective manager or supervisor. Respect means you recognize each individual, you value the individual, you give them personal attention using their personal name and saying something as simple as good morning, but you acknowledge the whole person, that they have a life outside of work, and there should be an element of work-life balance. This personal respect will go a long way to building your relationship with your team members. And S is for shared leadership. Shared leadership means you have opportunities in place to allow each of your team members to be in the driver's seat. You have rotating leadership, or you provide interim assignments, but you really foster the idea of internal subject matter experts with a unique skill set and expertise that builds their pride in their work, that builds their confidence, and that builds their motivation. So allow your team members to lead a meeting or lead a project or report back to the team on something they learned or implemented. Those are the factors that are important in building an effective team. In summary, we talked about the phases of team development and how it's important that you work through those periods of conflict. We talk about things that you can do to intervene with your team in case you have a period of conflict or discontent, and we talked about the factors that make an effective team. What are some ways you can develop cooperation in your work group? Thank you. This has been i2i Management Series on Team Leadership, Building an Effective Team.